Hello, everyone. We have another great show for you on CPAC Live today. We're going to be joined by Chang, who is the voice of real credibility when it comes to all things China and Hong Kong and all these questions about how the American economy and how the American people should think about our relationship with the Chinese Communist government of China. We also have Jim Jordan on, who has been such a crusader for everything we believe. He has had a perfect, this is like impossible, but like a perfect voting record in Congress. He literally gets 100 every year that he's in Congress. So he's a great conservative. He's a great friend of CPAC, as you all know, a great friend of our team and all of you. And we're going to be talking to him about a lot of issues, including what's going on with the Durham probe. But you know, each time we settle in for the weekend as a family, and we tend to leave the swamp because the swamp is getting quite feverish and really hostile in so many ways. And we get out of town, we go out and hang out with country people who are, by the way, the best kind of people. And I do a lot of checking up on what's going on around the world. And I know we're all looking at the news, and it's very disheartening. That's the spirit that really hit me this weekend. I just felt so down. I felt like my country is under attack, that it's crumbling. Good people are being attacked. Donald Trump is being attacked mercilessly on like 3 or 4 fronts at the same time. He had that interview with Chris Wallace over the weekend, which I have a lot of opinions about, but they just hammer Donald Trump constantly, and they hammer anybody who's standing up for the values that he's trying to stand up for as well. And then you read the news that George Soros, this horrible philanthropist who wants to create chaos in America, is giving an additional $200 million to feed the chaos. Here's how I want you to think about this. Yes, this is terrible. I believe it's evil. I believe that there's a coordinated effort between the chaos of the mobs and the intolerance of the mobs, the taking out good people who are trying to stand up for America and for our conservative values, and all of these Democrats who are both Nancy Pelosi trying to keep her majority in the House, Chuck Schumer trying to get the majority in the Senate, and of course Joe Biden, who is radical and wrong for America. And that's our new ACU tagline. You should use it. Joe Biden, radical and wrong. His policies are quite radical. He's not just a befuddled old man. He's quite radical and he's quite wrong for this country. And we need to stand up and start saying that. But you'll notice Donald Trump hired 1,500 new ground troops. He has 1 million volunteers. There's all these announcements about what's going on at the campaign. Have you noticed there's no announcements on the Joe Biden side? No additions, not adding any state directors, not adding any paid staff in battleground states. You know why? He doesn't need to. Because this $200 million and all this money going in through Act Blue, which is their online portal to kind of move money around on the left, that is Joe Biden's effort to have a ground army. The chaos that's going on in our cities, don't think that that's being done in kind of a separate way. That's being done in a way to help Joe Biden's presidential campaign and to really, once again, hammer Donald Trump in every way, create chaos, make it seem like Donald Trump's presidency is resulting in people getting sick and chaos, where we know the truth. The truth is that the chaos of the mob is all about pushing back on the police and getting cities to defund the police and having the legal authorities all over the country feel under duress, actually get in the minds and the heads of the individual law enforcement officers, just like they're trying to get inside your head and my head, to dispirit us, to tell us that Trump is down 15 points in the polls, to tell us that all the sports teams that we've been rooting on forever are inherently racist, that all these institutions that we love and the monuments we love to visit, and even our heroes, Christopher Columbus, Abraham Lincoln, that somehow they're despicable racists. And it's quite a psychops that they're pushing on all of us. So here's my words of encouragement. Let's all band together and not let it get to us. Let's build each other up. Let's support this country. Let's defend this country. Let's defend what's great about this country. And so it's Monday morning or Monday evening, Monday afternoon, Monday. How about that? It's Monday. And I have a great attitude, and we're going to have a great week, and we're going to all work together to protect our country. And talking about standing up for human freedoms, it always makes me immediately think of what's going on in China. And we're honored to be joined by our ACU board member, Gordon Chang. Gordon, thanks for joining us again on CPAC Live.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Matt. This is such an honor for me.
So you heard me go through what's going on in our country, but Americans shouldn't feel like they're alone in this struggle for human dignity and human freedom.
Oh, clearly not. What we are seeing in China is atrocities, genocide, crimes against humanity. They're against Tibetans, Uyghurs, and then, of course, the Chinese people are repressed by the communist regime. And essentially, Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, is trying to extend totalitarianism beyond China to the rest of the world. He has pretensions of ruling and dominating the entire planet, not just his periphery. So we've got to understand that this is a fundamental attack on democracy and freedom and liberty, and this is a global challenge. And of course, it's existential to the United States.
So one of the things that you're a clarion voice on is this idea that too many people in companies, we used to call it corporate America. I don't know if you can call it corporate America anymore, but you could say large publicly held companies based in America that do a lot of business in China. They've been getting a lot of advice on how they can cut costs and move over to China, which is part of an understanding of free trade and freedom. But then there's this really despicable part of that, which is this destruction of human rights that's going on in China right now with the Uyghurs.
Yes. Well, the Uyghurs are Muslim minority members, along with Kazakhs and Kyrgyz, and they inhabit what's called the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, which is the northwestern part of the country. Uyghurs and others think that they live in an independent state, which they call East Turkestan. But what we have seen is that whether you call it Xinjiang or East Turkestan, China is committing atrocities there. And this was brought home to everyone with this drone video that we have been seeing. It comes from 2018, and it shows Uyghurs and others who are blindfolded. They've got they are hands behind their back, and they are being loaded onto trains, cattle cars. And of course, this is reminiscent of something the world saw 80 years ago.
Right.
This keys into this point about corporate America, because Uyghurs are being transported around China to work in factories that we politely call forced labor, but which is really slavery. And to round this discussion out, Matt, we are seeing that American companies are using slave labor to produce products for the American and other markets.
And why you have talked about, I have talked about that many of these companies actually went to McKinsey to get advice on how they could actually offshore more of their expenses into China. And then you have these dynamics. And the real question is, how do you know this to be true, Gordon, number one? And number two, what can people associated with CPAC and conservatives across this country do to start calling out companies that are using this slavery to produce their products?
Well, for instance, to take the example of Uyghur labor, ASPI, which is an Australian think tank, in March produced a long report about, it's called Uyghurs for Sale, about Uyghurs being transported around China, about 80,000 of them. And they were working for 83 brands, including Nike. Nike has a factory in Shandong province, which is in the eastern part of it. There are about 700 Uyghur women there. This is a factory which is surrounded by high walls, guard towers, barbed wire, and they work inside of that factory. And clearly what's going on is that they have no ability to leave. Now, Nike, in a statement which was issued some time ago, said, well, look, this factory no longer employs Uyghurs, and Uyghurs who are there have the right to leave, which is contradictory. But the point is that this is slavery. This is abetting an atrocity, a crime against humanity. And this is the same company, Matt, that lectures Americans about racism. But what it's doing is it's making shoes. And this is one of its primary factories in the world for making shoes, makes 8 million shoes a year. And it's had a relationship with this factory for more than 3 decades. So what we have is the maintenance of a system of slavery where the slaves are racial minorities. And Nike talks to us about racism in our country.
Yeah, like for instance, you'll remember that they have a relationship with Colin Kaepernick, that they didn't want to produce this Betsy Ross flag, obviously our original flag, because we were told it was a flag of racism. And so you literally have companies that are feeding this chaos in our country, donating to these radical Marxist groups here in this country, and really virtue signaling to all of us, making us all feel like we should be ashamed of being Americans when it's America and voices within America like Gordon Chang that are standing up to literally slavery in China, slave labor in China, and this whole effort to inappropriately use human beings to compete in a fair way with America and other countries. This is where the whole question of China turns into a question of human rights and our national security, right, Gordon?
Oh, absolutely. Because the same China that is offering slave labor to international companies is the one that is building a military to fight the United States, which trains its officers to hate us and to relish killing us. China now has an officer corps that wants to kill. And it succeeded on June 15th in the Indian Himalayas, in Indian territory, killing 20 Indian soldiers. So this is not some sort of theoretical concern. We have a China that is trying to dismember its neighbors. It's increasing its tempo of dangerous intercepts of the U.S. Navy in the global commons. China is, as they say, is wolf warrior diplomacy, and it's lashing out. And this is perhaps one of the most dangerous times in history, where we need the United States to stay strong, to deter China, and to lead the international community in the defense against this militant regime.
So, Nike has a tagline, just do it. I think I'm just not going to do it. Okay, Gordon. And I know that some conservatives are uncomfortable with the idea of boycotts and, because we are free market people. We believe that Nike should run its company the way it wants to run it. And I actually agree with that. But you know what? I don't have to buy 7 pairs of sneakers for my family. I can probably find an alternative. My understanding is those alternatives could even be better shoes. I find that true with my own weak elderly tennis game that I'm experiencing on a regular basis. So, Gordon, there are other companies that our listeners should be aware of. Mike Pompeo recently has made many policy statements, and FCC Chairman Ajit Pai as well, on this whole question of Huawei and ZTE. The Trump administration is standing up against these communist government-controlled corporate entities. And in all of these questions, Donald Trump's position is completely the opposite of Joe Biden's weak on China position.
Yes. Well, it was Attorney General Barr on July 17th gave that speech about corporate America. He also gave that interview to Maria Bartiromo at the end of June. Secretary Pompeo has talked about this. And July 1st, the State Department, Treasury, Homeland Security, and Commerce issued its advisory on business operations in Xinjiang. The Trump administration is signaling that it will not permit American companies to aid and abet crimes against humanity and genocide in Xinjiang. So this is not just a question of, well, we don't like this company, so we should boycott it. Here, I believe that we have a moral obligation not to support what is going on in China, because this has gone beyond the question, beyond just a disagreement. This has gone to the issue of what we saw in the 1930s, because China very much, in many ways, is the new Third Reich. It's the Third Reich of our time, and we have the obligation to oppose it. And the Trump administration is doing its best in this regard. And right now we are seeing the administration take unprecedented actions against labor practices that we've just talked about.
You know, when we went to Hong Kong, Gordon, with you and with Lydia and the rest of our team, it was it was really interesting how many times the young Hong Kongers called the Chinese the the Nazi Chinese government. It was amazing how many times they used that word. It really resonated with them. Now, you can't compare one part of history perfectly with another part of history. The Nazi atrocities are unique in so many ways and horrific. But it always kind of took me that so many of these young people in Hong Kong were coming to that description on their own.
Yeah, the phrase that they use in Hong Kong is China Nazi.
Right.
And also, people have smashed together Xi Jinping and Hitler into Sittler. Um, it, Matt, when we look you're right, historical parallels are often difficult to make. But before Third Reich started the mass exterminations in the middle of the Second World War, what we're seeing China do is broadly similar, and in some cases worse than what the Third Reich was doing. So it runs across the parallel of genetic experiments that are dangerous, many of them on humans. You know, we see what we've been talking about in Xinjiang and in Tibet. This is just across the board evil, and we have to label it as such. And the important point is that we've had American administrations, liberals, conservatives, Republicans, and Democrats for 5 decades try to engage China. Well, that effort has been a spectacular failure. It's probably the worst foreign policy mistake the United States has ever made, and certainly the most dangerous, because we now find ourselves and our republic in jeopardy. So whether this is the Third Reich or some other parallel, the point is that China right now is extremely dangerous, and we are in the fight of our lives.
So, you know, as we come to a conclusion in this interview, Gordon, I think it is really telling that when you look at the radical leaders of a group like Black Lives Matter, they specifically call out for opposition and destruction the state of Israel. They do not call out these humanitarian and racist policies of the communist Chinese government. It's amazing how Marxists here, and these people are avowed self-professed Marxists, communists, socialists. You use the word totalitarians, collectivists. We can come up with all the other kind of synonyms. But what they are trying to do in many ways in this country is more in line with the chaos that's being created and perpetrated by these totalitarians in China. It's about pushing these policies of ethnic cleansing. It's about taking away people's individual rights, and specifically this question of the Uyghurs. These people do not have the choice to decide where they work. They don't have the choice to decide how they're going to live their lives. They don't have religious freedom. They don't have the ability to speak their mind. These freedoms we have in this country, we really must cherish and support and stand up for. And once again, I'm proud of the fact that the Trump administration is doing its level best to stand up for human rights and individual freedoms within China as well. It's an awfully important fight. And Gordon Chang and your wonderful wife, Lydia, we appreciate all the work you do for the American Conservative Union, for your work on our board of directors, which you do as a freedom-loving patriot, because it's the right cause. And keep speaking up and keep educating us. And thanks for being with us today on CPAC Live.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Matt. The work that you do is absolutely critical, because now this is the most consequential time of our lives.
For sure. And as we all have been following the terrible crimes and excesses of spying on the opponent's presidential campaign during the Obama years, let's never forget that under President Obama, the worst political crimes in our history were committed when he actually used, and his team used, the intelligence community to spy on their opponent. Mr. Durham is in charge of an investigation of all these abuses. We hope to hear from Mr. Durham soon. Watch this video clip, and on the other side, we're going to be joined by the great Jim Jordan.
The FBI knew that the dossier was just made-up garbage, and the subsource told the FBI agents that, and yet Jim Comey and Andrew McCabe kept on pushing forward, renewing warrants to spy on Carter Page. Your reaction to what we know now, and when are we going to hear from John Durham? Will there be indictments, sir?
Well, I think the American people expect indictments. I know I expect indictments based on the evidence I've seen. Lindsey Graham did a good job in getting that out. We know that they not only knew that there wasn't a case, but they continued to investigate and spy, and yes, I use the word spy, on Trump campaign officials, and actually even doing things when this president was sworn in and after that, and doing it in an inappropriate manner. You're going to see a couple of other documents come out in the coming days that will suggest that not only was the campaign spied on, but the FBI did not act appropriately as they were investigating. It's all starting to come unravel, and I tell you, it's time that people go to jail and people are indicted.
We always love to hear from the great chief of staff to President Donald Trump, the former Congressman Mark Meadows, who's doing a great job at the White House. And he's talking about something that we're all tired of talking about, right? Which is this, what looks like to me, I'm not a lawyer, but a lot of illegal activity, and really the politicization of using your White House power and executive branch power to spy on and really debilitate your opponent in a presidential campaign. And then, as that President Donald Trump tries to get started with a new administration, you listen to what Mark said. Yeah. What's your reaction?
Well, first reaction is you're right. Mark Meadows is a great member of Congress. He's doing a great job as the president's chief of staff, and he's exactly right, and he used the right word, the word spying, because that's exactly what they did. The Obama-Biden administration spied on the Trump campaign, spied on fellow American citizens during 2016, and then into the new administration. And remember, there was never a proper predicate for launching the investigation in the first place. And we know there was not a proper predicate because the Obama-Biden intel community told us. They didn't want to tell us, but Rick Grenell released their sworn testimony, and we know that what Clapper said, Susan Rice said, what Sally Yates, what they all Samantha, what they all said.
Can I jump in there? When you say proper predicate, if I put that in non-legal terms, which means they had no reason to be able to get a warrant. You have to have a reason in front of a judge. You have to have some suspicion.
Right, and no reason, no basis to launch the investigation in the first place.
Which was done for a president, right?
Yeah.
You don't launch those kinds of investigations unless they're for a person high up on the food chain that's asking you to do that investigation.
Well, we know that there was the now somewhat famous meeting in the Oval Office when it was President-elect Trump. So on January 5th, 2017, 15 days before President Trump's going to take the oath of office, they're meeting in the Oval Office, and Obama's in there, Biden's in there, Comey's in there, Susan Rice is in there. This is the one that she did the email to herself 2 weeks later. And
said, for the record.
For the record, by the book.
Yep.
President Obama said everything by the book. But they, when you do that, that means they did everything not by the book.
That's right.
That's the meeting where Joe Biden referenced the Logan Act, using the Logan Act to go after a three-star general, General Flynn. So they did everything wrong here. And as Mark said, people need to be held to account. It's I know you travel a lot. When I'm out and about, it's the number one question I get.
Number one.
When is someone going to jail?
Yeah, because if you run a small business in this country, and you have an OSHA infraction, or you don't pay your proper amount of taxes, the federal government comes down on you hard. If you're a doctor and you're involved in Medicare or Medicaid, the likelihood that you're going to have at some point some kind of judgment against you is almost 100%.
Yep.
But yet, the Team Obama can use these powers in a way that I consider illegal and certainly politicized and hyped to try to harm an opponent. Right. Nobody. No, nobody.
Yeah.
And Obama goes on television, President Obama goes on television, and all of his acolytes say, boy, this was the most, the most faithful to the law administration with zero people, having scandals. They literally say that. But I think we're all tired of hearing that.
We sure are, but never forget what the Attorney General said the first time he testified, after he'd been, confirmed. First time he testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee, he said there was a failure of leadership at the upper echelon of the FBI. And I tell people that's the biggest understatement in history because, Comey was fired. Andy McCabe fired, was under investigation. Jim Baker, the chief counsel, had to leave and was under investigation. Peter Strzok, who ran the Clinton investigation and then ran the Trump-Russia investigation, was fired and under investigation. And of course, then Lisa Page also had to leave the FBI. Those are the 5 key people who ran these, probably the 2 biggest investigations of our lifetime. The Clinton investigation, the mid-year exam, and then the Trump-Russia investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, which I find interesting, by the way. You can sort of tell where their focus was by the names they gave the investigation. Clinton mid-year exam, like, oh, we just got to trudge, kind of drudge and get through this, and everything's fine with her. But with President Trump, this is Crossfire Hurricane. You can almost see him pounding their chest like Tarzan. We're going to get this guy, and that's exactly what they tried to do. And now the one individual.
I actually think they thought he was guilty. I think one of the reasons they had these hype titles is I think they just thought the guy was deplorable, and they would find all these things. And what they didn't realize is he had been under scrutiny by prosecutors in the Southern District of New York his whole career, and he turned out to be someone who had operated with integrity.
And the guy who stands in their way now, though, is the Attorney General. Because he's dug into this. He's put Mr. Durham on it. We've gotten facts out now that we didn't have before. We knew there was something wrong. In fact, when a few months ago I said the only thing we had wrong, there was a handful, a few people in the conservative world, in the journalism world, a handful of members of Congress. We kept pushing. The only thing we had wrong about all this is it was worse than we thought. And now the Democrats have decided the one person we can go after to hopefully stop this from ultimately being concluded and someone being held accountable, the one person we need to go after and stop is Bill Barr. And so they just 2.5 weeks ago, they filed articles of impeachment against the Attorney General.
Yes,
and when President Trump wins re-election, which I'm convinced he's going to do, when he wins re-election, I think that's what you're going to see him do. I think they're going to proceed with those. They're not going to do it between now and Election Day. But after Election Day, I think they will pursue impeachment against the Attorney General. And we'll be back at this thing again that we just went through 6 months ago.
Unless we can get that House majority, which I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think it's in play. I will say when it came to Hillary Clinton, remember, there wasn't an investigation of Hillary Clinton by Jim Comey. Loretta Lynch called it a matter. Said we're going to call it a matter. Right. This is the euphemizing of everything that has to do with them. And I think it was 5, 6, or 7 House investigations until the special Benghazi investigation where the Clintons had to fess up because you found out that there was a server in a toilet, right? Or in a bathroom. And so I always think that's amazing. It's like, how can Hillary Clinton be under oath, 5, 6 different congressional investigations, never fesses up to the fact that she has this whole outside communication system? That's so funny. When they say, you've done too much. When they say these things about like, oh, the Trump people, they're just like, they're not participating in the investigation, they're throwing up all these false flags. Nothing in the history of the world was more duplicitous than watching Team Clinton push back on what happened around Benghazi. And by the way, it bleeds to Susan Rice. She goes on every Sunday morning TV show. They call that the full Ginsburg, because Ginsburg had represented Monica Lewinsky, and the first time in modern American politics he went on every Sunday show. She went on every Sunday show and deliberately lied to the world and to the American people as to what happened on that fateful day in Benghazi. And now she's one of the leading candidates to be Joe Biden's VP.
With the also famous email on January 20th, at the exact moment the President of the United States, President Trump, is taking the oath of office, she's writing an email to herself saying that in that January 5th meeting, the President of the United States then, President Obama, said do everything by the book in the Trump-Russia investigation. And we know that is completely false because everything was done exactly the opposite, not by the book at all, in the fact that they spied on a presidential campaign, spied on American citizens. And for one of those citizens, they used a dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign, a dossier where the person who had written it, Christopher Steele, had already communicated to the Justice Department that he was desperate, this is his quote, desperate to stop Trump from getting elected. That's the guy who wrote it. That's the document they used. The Clinton campaign paid for it. They go to the court and don't tell the court any of that information. And there were 15 other things they didn't tell the court. 15 other lies. 17 lies in total. Inspector General Horowitz said were involved in the Carter Page dossier and the Carter Page FISA application. That's how bad it was. And so when Mark Meadows says that someone needs to be held accountable and they think there's going to be indictments, there had better be. And I hope it's Brennan, Clapper, Comey. I hope it's all of them.
Yeah, I still believe that Brennan was very involved in feeding into people's briefings all throughout the government that this whole Russian collusion was a real thing. I think that there was nuggets dropped everywhere. I think it was purposeful to get people to start
in the press
acting.
No, very true. Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. Some people have written about this very extensively. But you're exactly right. They would leak it. Well, we'll go to the meeting the next day. So January 5th, there's this meeting in the White House with these key people where Biden is talking about the Logan Act and how they're going to get Michael Flynn. Remember what happens the next day, January 6th. That's when they all go up. Comey, Clapper, Brennan, they all go up to the Trump Tower to give President-elect Trump his intelligence briefing that the incoming president is supposed to get. So they go up there, they brief him, give him the information he's supposed to get. Everyone leaves, but Comey sticks around. Comey sticks around because he's going to be also sticking around in the next administration. He sticks around, tells the president about the dossier that Jim Comey already knows is false. So he tells the president about the dossier for the express purpose that they can then go leak the fact that they talked to the president about the dossier.
And I also think it was a way of leveraging the president, like we got the goods on you.
Yes,
which is what Hoover did for decades as the head of the FBI, drop little pieces of information to politicians so that those politicians would be in their hand and they could control them.
Yeah, and then they go out and leak the fact that they've talked that. So the press reports that. That's all part of, I think, the setup for Michael Flynn, which happens 2 weeks later when, again, Comey told us this, they sneak guys into the White House, don't follow proper protocols, don't tell Michael Flynn that he's entitled to a lawyer, sneak people in and trap Michael Flynn and get him to set him up, and then ultimately he gets indicted.
Yeah, now, so you say you do a lot of traveling, which we're glad about. You got to get everywhere. In the state of Ohio, we're reading that the president is in real trouble for his reelection. All these polls have come out that show him. It's amazing. I don't know how it's true. He's almost exactly behind Joe Biden. Exactly the same number he was behind Hillary Clinton at this point 4 years ago, which makes me feel more dubious. And I actually believe in polls and read these polls. But what are you hearing in Ohio?
No, I think it's good in Ohio. He won Ohio by 8.5 points. He's going to win Ohio again, I think, by that margin or more. You see Trump flags going up. You see him out in the country. Now, the one thing I will say about the polls and where we're at today, and I think it's even more magnified than what it was in 2016. I do think there are lots of people, because of the cancel culture mob that's out there. You know, you say the wrong thing, the mob attacks you. They try to get you fired, whatever. So I think there are lots of people who are just like keeping their head down. I'm sure you've had this experience. People walk up to me and says, "Hey, I'm for Trump." So
I call it the Trump whisper.
The Trump whisper, exactly.
You have the same thing?
Totally. And so I think you have that dynamic in play.
I bet the whisperer is probably not going to answer a pollster.
Not going to.
Because they don't know if it's a trick, will the information be shared? Will they literally lose their job? You could lose your job today in some of these corporations by just going to an evangelical church, a Baptist church, a conservative Catholic church, because that's hate speech. You know that, right?
Well, exactly, because the First Amendment is not really the First Amendment today because only one side's allowed to talk, and that is scary where we're at in the country. The example I keep pointing to is the football coach at Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, goes fishing with his kids, wears a T-shirt that, according to the cancel culture mob, is wrong, an OAN T-shirt, wears the T-shirt, and he had to take a pay cut. He had to do all the training and everything else, all kinds of apologies for simply wearing the wrong T-shirt fishing with his boys. You got to be kidding me. So that's how bad the mob is. I think that dynamic's in play. That's why these polls don't, I think, accurately reflect where the president is. But I still feel very confident in Ohio. The president's going to win just like he did 4 years ago. Yeah,
for sure. And you see all of this talk about 43 alumni for Biden, the Lincoln Project, which has, by the way, isn't it ironic that the Lincoln Project isn't saying anything against the mob trying to rip down Abraham Lincoln all over the place,
right?
Point. So it's really not about, as I said the other day on Twitter, it's not about Abe Lincoln. I think it's about the Lincoln Town Car that they all drive in to go to all these fundraisers to figure out how to destroy America.
Great point. You think about what this president has accomplished with every single Democrat being against him, everyone in the mainstream press being against him, and frankly part of the Republican Party being against him. And yet, in spite of all that, amazing accomplishments, I always say that, taxes cut, regulations reduced, greatest economy in history prior to the coronavirus, lowest unemployment in 50 years, wages going up for everyone, out of the Iran deal, embassy in Jerusalem, hostages home from North Korea, new trade agreements, and a bunch of other things that I can't remember at the time. But that's how good it was and will be again. And we're already seeing, I was at a business in our district last Thursday, And they've been in operation 75 years. They said March of 2020 was the best month they've had in all 75 years of their business. May was the worst month. But guess what? In July, they're back up to where they were. So when the president talks about the V is happening, and it will continue to happen unless these Democrat mayors and Democrat governors keep getting in the way and not letting our economy reopen and our economy flourish. So it's good news out there. It's been good news under this president's leadership. I think Americans will remember that. And on election day, I think he's going to win Ohio. I think he's going to win big, just like he did 4 years ago.
So to close the door on the fact that there are Republicans that are opposing Trump, I think what you all need to understand is that within these polls, we've never had a Republican president who had more support from conservatives, which is the most important part of this coalition, and Republicans ever. George W. Bush never had this level of support. Ronald Reagan never had this level of support. So why is there this cranky and loud and very well-funded couple of groups, right, that have come on? Well, it's the swamp, my friends. And these are people that are trying to, they're looking at the polls and they're saying, oh, Joe Biden's going to win. And I never really cottoned to Donald Trump anyway. So I've got to position myself from a career standpoint to be accepted by the new Biden people. Now, let me tell you, I've been around this town too long. That's why I have all this white hair. They're not going to be accepted by any Biden people. Yeah. They think they're doing something smart here, and they're going to get used, and then they're going to get chucked to the side. And then this whole question on the Lincoln Project, this is nothing but a couple of consultants that have an axe to grind. And you know what's interesting? I was talking to Mercy this morning as we had our morning cup of coffee, complaining about things generally. But, they keep running all these ads on Fox News. I think they're agitating the heck out of our people. Yeah. I think our people are getting one kind of fired up while they watch this really false messaging. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing back home.
Totally. The energy is there, the intensity.
Yeah. Like I've never seen in politics, really.
For people to come out and support this president who has stood up to the cancel culture mob, stood up to the swamp. But you're right. When you stand up to the mob, when you stand up to the mob and the swamp fight back. And that's what we're seeing. But, there was a bunch of Republicans who did this in the summer of 2016. They didn't think the president could win. They started running for the hills. Even some of them who wound up being Speaker of the House. They were wrong then, and I think they're wrong this time. But it's not. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do.
I remember that person.
We just got to keep pressing on. And
this happened in 2004 with President Bush as well. You really can't rely on some of these establishment Republicans who are in this town. Because in the end, so many times they put their own career above the interests of the country. And I think we're just seeing that again. So this plays into this question. You need 17 seats to get the majority back in the House, literally to prevent the impeachment of Donald Trump a second time, to prevent the impeachment of Bill Barr a first time, and everywhere else they're going to go. Are you hopeful? Do you think it's going to be a stretch? Do you have any seats we can pick up in Ohio?
No, I think Ohio will be tough because we already got 12 of the 16, so we 12 of the 16.
And you'll hold those, right?
Yeah, we will. We feel very good about those. But the best example, the best indication is what happened in California with Mike Garcia. Great member, new member.
Already a pickup.
Yeah, and so we're down to, just as you said, 17. I think we can get there. Now, the conventional wisdom in this town is, no, you can't get there. But I think we can. And that's the first time we picked up a seat in California, moved a Democrat seat to Republican in 22 years. And he didn't just win by a couple votes. He won by thousands and thousands of votes. So
and they put a lot of money in it.
Well, they changed the rules the last week.
Yeah.
They were going to do all mail-in, and then they said, well, wait a minute, we don't think that's helping us, so we're going to open up one precinct in the most Democrat area of the district, and they still couldn't get there. And Mike beat him bad. I mean, he's a Hispanic American descent. He's a fighter pilot.
Yep.
Went to the Naval Academy. Great candidate, great guy, and he won big. So I think
we endorsed him at ACU. So you all played your role too.
Oh, God bless you. I figured you did.
So let me push in on this question of Act Blue. So Act Blue is this online digital portal where all the left from really all over the world, but specifically here in this country, is feeding money to very radicalized Marxist left-wing group. Mm-hmm. They're also the online platform that's pushing the majority, the Democratic majority for Nancy Pelosi, for Chuck Schumer, and Joe Biden. So all of this online portal called Act Blue is the same group that is funding these radical folks at Black Lives Matter and these other places. So, I think we ought to call Joe Biden out on the fact, like, all this money, right, is being coordinated with all these groups.
Yeah, all these left groups.
Yeah, they don't seem to even like America.
No, all these left groups who want to defund the police, and in the case of Minneapolis, want to abolish the police department, and want this radical I keep coming back to this term, this cancel culture mob mentality taking over the country, which is just frightening, I think, to most Americans. So, yeah, these are hard leftists. That's what's at stake in this election. I think the vice president said this the other day. This election is really now, in my judgment, and the vice president communicated it so well, can America stay America? The values and principles that made us the greatest nation ever, that's what's at stake here. And we all know where Biden and the Democrat left want to take the country, it will not be the same country. It will fundamentally change. And if they get power, imagine what the first thing they're going to do is change the filibuster in the Senate, which will then allow them to add Puerto Rico and D.C. as states, which then means it makes it real tough for us to ever win back the Senate if they do that. They're going to look to change the Electoral College. They're going to look to add new seats to the Supreme Court. They're going to look to mess with the voting booth in the United States run elections and federalize more federal control over the election process. So a host of fundamental framework kind of changes that undermine
they
what
will
the country's
transform
about.
America, which means fundamentally change it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean improve it.
Right.
It means fundamentally change it. And there's a lot at stake. And we appreciate your voice in all these fights.
Well, we appreciate yours. You guys have been around a few years fighting the good fight. God bless you.
We haven't. And the thing is, I'm so bad at broadcasting that I didn't even introduce Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
Because I know you know who he is. And he's got all of these great awards from us through the years. 100%. I think it's every year you've been in Congress. Yeah. Which I hate bringing up because you can always screw that up, Congressman. One vote.
This will probably be the year now that you mentioned it.
Well, we appreciate all you. We
you.
Appreciate you standing up, and we love coming at you 3 times a week on CPAC Live. We really, we just feel like this is such an important moment, and we all have to work together to save our country.
God bless you.
Thank you, Jim Jordan.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.